Howdy, I'm Hayden, that guy you just so happened to stumble upon because the YouTube algorithm decided to throw me a bone, and it was greatly appreciated. And guess what? I'm a Smash Bros. Fan. I grew up with Smash 64, Brawl, and Smash 4. I didn't play Melee till I was 16, and I've constantly returned to Smash Ultimate because of course I do. You would too, wouldn't you? Now, I don't mean to flex, but I own every Smash game on original hardware. Kinda like Mario Kart. I've recently been goofing around and popping in these games just for gits and shiggles, and it got me thinking about how I would rank the 6 Super Smash Bros. Games. Yes, I said 6, because I consider 3DS and Wii U to be separate games. So here we are in the present with my list, ranking the Super Smash Bros. Games, from weakest to best, because none of these games are actually bad. Now, it's pretty much mandatory that I say this, but you gotta remember, this is all my personal opinion, so please don't get mad at me when I put Melee at number 6. So without further ado, let's get into it! Number 6. Super Smash Bros. Melee. See? I wasn't lying. I'm gonna get so flamed for this. I'm not a competitive Smash player, so I don't come back to this game other than for dumb fun. That being said, I understand why this is the go-to for competitive Smash players. I've seen all the wave dashing compilations and wombo combo memes, they're very funny, but it's just not for me. I also didn't grow up with this game, so I have no childhood nostalgia linked to it, so I can't go back to this game and ponder over thoughts of my childhood. I'm also not the biggest fan of this game's roster. Dr. Mario, Pichu, Roy, and Young Link all feel like filler characters, and they're the majority of the newcomers. While I think in a roster like Ultimates they're ultimately harmless, in a game like Melee, I think some more unique characters would have been appreciated. Now, this isn't to say all of the newcomers were bad. Bowser is my main, Mewtwo is highly underrated, Mr. Game & Watch is Christ, and Marth, despite starting a Smash trend I'm not too fond of, is really fun to play and stands out as a good bit of Fire Emblem representation. The stages are really solid as well, with Pokeflits being underrated as hell, Melee's rendition of Mushroom Kingdom being really solid, Temple is iconic, Game & Watch is a deep cut, and Rainbow Ride is fun and infuriating. The adventure mode in Melee is fun. At first. But not much after that. It gets really boring and more repetitive than Classic mode. I like how you venture through the worlds of Nintendo characters, but again, that's only fun for so long. Speaking of Classic mode, it manages to be a major step up from 64, having a set format yes, but mixing up the characters and game modes, while also including mainstays like the Metal Battles and the Master Hand fights and the Break the Target stages. Melee also introduced the Events mode, which would carry on to Brawl and Wii U, and they're fun gimmick matches that you can get some joy out of. It's a really creative break from the usual fighting and boring Classic mode. Overall, I like Melee. It's a fine Smash game, but feels the weakest to me in a sea of innovation and hype. But I'll give it this. It did give us Giga Bowser, and I will forever cherish that. Number 5. Super Smash Bros. 64. The game that started it all. Smash 64 is a really fun and cartoony fighting game. In a world of complicated fighters where you had to hit 3 buttons at once, do a triple 360 spin with the joystick, and come to terms with why you're still a virgin just to pull off an uppercut, Smash Bros. Hits us with the 2-button combat setup with some direction-based attacks and beginner-friendly design. It's a very simple and small game, it's not complex in the slightest, and obviously reeks of first game in the series-itis. Sakurai had to think smart when making a roster for the first Smash game, and I think he did a damn good job. With a few Mario characters, obviously, it's Nintendo's flagship franchise. Pokemon, of course, it was really big in the late 90s. Donkey Kong? Perfect. Love Big Monkey. Ness? Alright, it's a bit obscure, but I like it. Kirby, Fox McCloud, and Captain Falcon? Alright, I'm sold. The roster is incredibly varied and unique, with the only outlier being Jigglypuff, who mirrors Kirby a bit too much, but thankfully isn't an exact copy, and would go on to create an identity for herself as the franchise went on. The stages in 64 are also something to behold, and similarly to the character roster, is a well-varied list that perfectly represents the Nintendo brand. Mushroom Kingdom, Congo Jungle, Hyrule Castle, The Great Box, Dreamland, and the list goes on. Classic mode is perfectly fine, however, due to it being the exact same every time you play it, it gets stale very quickly. But this isn't that big of a deal because of how small the character roster was. You don't have to replay it 70 times. The game hasn't aged the best because of how much the games after it innovate on the formula this game set up, and not to mention its simplistic control scheme makes it rather boring and monotonous to control. But I can give it a pass because you're playing it on this thing, and this was the first game in the series. Thanks for the memories, Smash 64, you absolute legend. Number 4. Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. Smash 4 was split up into 2 games, and this was the version I never played. When I said I grew up with Smash 4, I meant the 3DS version. Smash Wii U, despite being roughly the same as its 3DS counterpart, is the inferior of the two, mainly because I'm not the biggest fan of this version's exclusive content. So, Smash Tour sucks. Anyways, the stages in Smash... Okay, I'm kidding. Smash 4 is a sorry excuse for a party game, and is a total bore. Not to mention, it's practically impossible to get anyone to play this mode with you, and after the minimal amount of time I spent playing this mode, I can tell why. The main issue is that the games are incredibly slow, and the fighting in this mode feels superfluous, like it was added in as the minigame substitute in order to justify this mode being thrown into a fighting game. Its 3DS alternative is far better than it, but I'll get to that when the time comes. Smash Tour is crap, but what about the other exclusive content? It's not much better. Okay, that's a bit harsh. Thanks to the Wii U's gamepad, Stage Builder is a lot more bearable to use than it was in Brawl, but I still can't remember a single time I heard anyone talk about Smash 4's Stage Builder. They usually end up talking about Smash Ultimates or Brawls, which, in a strange way, seem to benefit from being so restricted. I'm getting ahead of myself. The exclusive stages in Wii U aren't great, but some of them are gems. Mushroom Kingdom U is a fine evolution of the previous, 75M is cool aesthetically, but horrible for gameplay, Jungle Hijinks is solid, and Gamer is the GOAT. Okay, so no more delaying the inevitable. Classic mode is so f***ing bad. Like, honestly, what made the developers think an elimination tournament was a good idea? Seriously. I wouldn't be as upset as I am if this was some other game mode, but no, this is Classic mode. The mode gets so repetitive and there are constant interruptions during gameplay that it becomes irritating as time goes on. Not to mention the break the target stages are by far the worst in the series.
No contest!
Okay, I need to break away from the tragedy. Wii U did bring back the events mode from Melee and Brawl, and they're fine. I think Brawl did it better, but the fact that Wii U kept the train going is admirable. And they are better than the Classic mode and pick up its slack a little bit, which brings this mode up a notch. But ultimately, what it boils down to is that this is a really fun Smash game. It's great with friends, and 8-player Smash, while being overly chaotic, is really fun when you're in the right mood. Despite its flawed game modes and lackluster stages, this game is more good than bad, which I will discuss when we get to the 3DS, because the two games share many of their best aspects. Number 3. Super Smash Bros. Brawl. This was my go-to childhood Smash Bros. Game. I have so many fond memories of playing games on my Wii that had a hard drive with a bunch of pirated games on it. I was truly living the dream. Now, obviously, I'm very biased towards this game. My nostalgia glasses are always on very tight anytime I so much as glance at it on my shelf. So disclaimers out of the way, let's tear into this mother hugger. The main aspect of Brawl that ranks it as number 3 on this list is, of course, the Masterpieces mode. I mean, how cool is this? You can play the original Super Mario Bros. For a whole 30 seconds. I am so happy they brought this mode back for Smash 4. We are truly blessed. I am now going to send death threats to Nintendo for not bringing back this mode for Ultimate. I'm just yanking your chain. Masterpieces is fine, but the real gem of Brawl is the Subspace Emissary. The beefy story mode that acts as a 1-to-100 evolution of Melee's mediocre adventure mode. I could go on for 77 actual years just talking about this story mode, but I'll do my best to keep it brief. The cutscenes are a highlight of this mode, being wonderfully animated and following a constantly evolving narrative. Compiling all these together creates essentially a full Nintendo Infinity War movie, with the last few bits being the endgame of it all. The worlds to explore are vast and expansive, full of secrets and treasures. You're rewarded for exploring these levels, and it's practically mandatory in order to get to that 100% completion. The boss fights are fantastic, with a nice mix of classic Nintendo bosses and original concepts that stick in your head. Gallium is best spot, by the way. So I'm gonna stop myself before I write myself into an endless cycle of yammering and move on. Events return from Melee, and they're better than Melee's, but still act as nothing more than a fun distraction in my opinion. I did like how hard some of them could get, and they definitely kept me occupied as a kid when I wanted to play Brawl, but I was still lost in the Great Maze, and I didn't want to play a normal match. Earlier, I mentioned the Stage Builder thriving off its restrictions. To elaborate, I think having a limit to what you can do in the Stage Builder promotes a bit more thought and creativity. Because in order to make what you want to make, you gotta get a little silly. Despite the limited resources, I still managed to make a stage based on the Doom ships from Mario 3. Brawl's classic mode, to get it out of the way, is the perfect middle-of-the-road classic adventure. Better than Melee's, totally inferior to Ultimates, and laughs in the sorry face of Wii U's. It gets the formula just right, and is easily replayable due to its more random nature. The character roster is something to behold, let me tell ya. Sonic was very shocking for the time, and Smash Bros. Just isn't the same without the blue blur now. Snake is just, I mean, come on, it's Snake. The guy with the rocket launcher and grenades. Captain Olimar is a great choice considering how successful the Pikmin games were. King Dedede is my secondary main, and of course, Meta Knight, the most overpowered character in all of Smash history. If Melee Fox and Brawl Meta Knight got into a bar fight, they'd scuffle for a while before eventually realizing they have a lot in common, and sit down to get drinks. But then they'd argue over who's covering the tab and then fight again, in which Meta Knight would win and pay for their drinks like the gentleman he is. So yeah, pretty great roster. It isn't without its flaws like Wolf, and I hate to say this, but I don't much care for Lucas, Ness supremacy. I'm also a huge fan of this game's stages. Delfino Plaza is really fun, Mushroomy Kingdom is a really awesome concept and looks really cool, Birth of Elden was my favorite stage as a kid despite the fact I never knew its actual name, I just called it the Zelda Bridge stage. And WarioWare Inc. is one of the best Smash stages, fight me. Before I end off this segment, I have one last thing to say. Brawl has the best main theme, and there's absolutely nothing that you can say that would ever change my opinion about it. You could say that the opera that sings it consisted of 13 uncaught serial killers, and I'd still say that shit's fire. Life Light slaps hard, don't get me wrong, but goddamn, this goes hard. Number 2. Super Smash Bros. For 3DS. This is my other childhood Smash game that I grew up with. Not to the same extent as Brawl, but this game being on the go definitely drew 10-year-old me in more often. Yeah. There's a huge thing that brings this game up a few notches. It's portability. Smash on the go was, at the time, just a distant thought that could only be accomplished with homebrew portable GameCubes and Wiis. Now with Ultimate being on the Switch, this is no longer the only Smash game that you can bring with you to jury duty. But for a while it was, and it clearly influenced Nintendo to keep making Smash games portable. Or at least that's what I like to think. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Smash 3DS's exclusive content and what makes this game so special, and then I'm going to talk about the stuff it shares with Wii U and what makes those two games special, okay? Okay. Smash Run is awesome, no cap. Do you remember City Trials in Kirby Air Ride? Yeah, it's basically that, but in a fighting game. You gotta run around this huge map, fighting enemies from all sorts of Nintendo games, all while collecting tokens that boost certain stats, and it's all completely random. When running around time is over, you could have maxed out your speed stat or jump stat, or maybe you balanced all your stats out nice and even. But in the end, it doesn't even matter! Because the final fight could either be a foot race, a jumping race, or a free-for-all. You never know, so you can never prepare yourself. It's perfect chaos. The exclusive stages in 3DS are also really solid. New Super Mario Bros. 2 is really cool with its coin collecting mechanic, 3D Land is super cool and is just a reminder that Errorfix still hasn't finished his 3D Land retrospective. Where is it, dude? I'm waiting. Pac-Maze is super cool with all the pellets and ghosts, Spirit Train is a train stage so it's automatically amazing, and Tortimer Island is really cute and relaxing, even when Yoshi is drop-kicking a child. This game's classic mode isn't as good as Brawl's, but is leagues better than Wii U's. 3DS's classic mode has a multi-path structure, where you take different paths based on what difficulty you want. The higher the difficulty, the more loot you get. Simple as that. This version of classic mode is also one of the hardest. Like, seriously, this mode can kick your ass if you pay enough dough. Oh yeah, that's right, you gotta pay to play classic mode. The higher the difficulty, the more coins you shell out. Okay, that's all the exclusive stuff I wanted to chat about. And here's all the junk that it shares with Wii U that makes both games special. The character roster is friggin' sweet. You got Pac-Man, Villager, Bowser Jr., Rosalina and that stupid little piece of deadweight, a bunch of anime sword fighters nobody asked for, Shulk, and Dark Pit. Smash 4 also had a lot of DLC, which ranged from more fighters like the returning Lucas and Mewtwo, or newcomers like Ryu and Cloud. Tons of stages came with the DLC, many of which were for previous games, like 64 Dreamland, 64 Peach's Castle, and 64 Hyrule Castle. Okay, most of them are from 64. The DLC also had plenty of Mii outfits. Crap, that's right, the Mii Fighters! Some of the new characters for Smash 4 were the Mii Fighters, which consisted of a Brawler, Gunner, and a Sword Fighter. They could all be customized with cosmetics and stat badges in order to boost certain stats. And the best part is, you could make yourself a fighter in Smash Bros. You could have your own custom Miis as fighters. But in Smash 4, you couldn't use them online out of fear of harassment or something. You can also train amiibos, customize the Nintendo characters with stat badges, and of course there were plenty of side modes like all the other Smash games. Multi-Man Smash, run contests, and the worst version of Break the Targets. Smash 4 is packed with content in both versions. Some modes suck, some are great, and some are just okay. But as an overall package, you're getting your money's worth with this game. But like I said, I prefer the 3DS version. Number 1. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Of course, this is the best Smash Bros. Game. Are you even surprised? Ultimate is a testament to how the further the series goes on, the better the games get. We're gonna be here a while, so get cozy. Refill your soda pop, get some licorice sticks, and heat up that lasagna. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate has the most amount of content, both new and old, and damn near all of it is really solid. Let's get the obvious out of the way. Everyone is here. Every single character from every previous Smash game returns alongside a metric butt ton of new characters. King Croc K. Rool, Simon Belmont, the Inklings, who were in the baller-ass reveal trailer, Ridley, whose inclusion made Nathaniel Bandy eat his own shorts, Incineraor, and there were all the Echo Fighters, who, while being basic copies, still have value for just existing. Daisy, Isabel, Dark Samus, Richter, etc. Not to mention the DLC fighters like Joka, Piranha Plant, Banjo Frickin' Kazooie, Sora, and Not Waluigi. The amount of characters in this game is unreal and will never be topped. So the roster is cool. Is that all this game has going for it? Of course not. The stage selection is the best in the series. Although I usually play on random Final Destination maps, some of these stages are really fun to goof around on with friends. That is, if you have any. New Donk City is really fun. Moray Towers is the perfect Splatoon stage. Dracula's Castle is neat looking. And the vast majority of stages in Ultimate are from previous games. But that's okay, that's kind of what this game's all about. It's a celebration of Smash Bros. Sadly, Pokefloats didn't make its grand return like it should have. This is blatant Pokefloat erasure, and I will not stand for it. Ultimate also brought back Stage Builder from Brawl and Wii U, and it's amazing. The player has full creative freedom with what they can put on the stage, and some works of art have been put onto the platform. Shoutouts to Waluigi's Wrath. If you want to see some of the best and the best worst stages this has to offer, I recommend checking out AlphaRad's Stage Builder Was a Mistake series. It's hysterical. So the characters and stages are great, whatever, it's not like this game has some worthy follow-up to the Subspace Emissary. Except it does. World of Light can slap, sometimes. As an adventure, it's not terrible. The overworld map is gargantuan and has lots to explore, paths to follow, secrets to find, characters to unlock, fights to be had, and mini challenges to be discovered and beaten. The fights all have some sort of gimmick, and they're fun to mess around with and trial and error for. While I don't think the spirits are a good evolution of the trophies, they still play their part as the main collectible. World of Light? Certified banger. Classic mode is the best it's ever been in Ultimate. This is peak Classic mode. Each character has a specially designed version of Classic mode which truly makes it endlessly replayable. Remember how in 64 and Melee, each character would have target stages designed for them and their abilities? That's pretty much what Nintendo did for Classic mode this time around, and it is beyond perfect. And the better you do in each match increases the difficulty of the next match, which is really smart and makes it a decent challenge to get to the coveted 9.9 difficulty. I like to think that Nintendo made Classic Mode in Ultimate so good as a sort of apology for how terrible Wii U's was and how meh 3DS's was, and they couldn't have done it any better. Now, World of Light and Classic go on forever, so I can understand why some of the other game modes weren't at it. I would have really liked to have seen Smash Run make a return, but it makes sense that it didn't, and it not being in Ultimate just gives 3DS more value. Most of the fun side modes from the previous games all return, like multi-man Smash modes returned, and although it wasn't in the base game, Home Run Contest was added in some DLC a while later, and it's the best it's ever been, with how cinematic the game gets when you launch that sucker. Events didn't return from the previous game, which is fine. I never had any strong opinions over that mode, so I'm not exactly losing sleep over it. I think that's enough. I'm sure you get the point. Ultimate is my favorite Smash game because of how packed full of content it is, and how amazing all of that content is. It is truly the ultimate Smash Bros. That was by far one of the longest scripts for these videos I've ever written, but you can never be too sure about these things. My old Halloween series ranking video is pushing 15 pages. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Thanks for watching this video. I know my opinions are strange, and I'll probably get ripped to shreds in the comments section, but I'm still curious what your ranking would be, and if anyone out there actually likes Wii U's Classic Mode. You're free to share, but if you value your safety and your docs, I wouldn't recommend it. If you like me and my content, be sure to share it with your friends, and consider coming back for a second dose one of these days. Thank you again for watching, I'll see you next time, and have a great frickin' day.